Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod Sleep Stories. I am Laura, and if you are here today to listen to a dreamy story that will soothe you and comfort you, you are in the right place. Tonight, I will tell you a story about a secret place in Italy and a legend that became part of its charm. Before we begin the story, take a moment to put aside any other thoughts that are crowding your mind at this time. Inhale deeply and exhale, letting your breath linger. Feel your lungs fill with fresh air on the inhale, and then feel them release all the tension you may be holding with the exhale. As your breathing continues, I want you to imagine that you are traveling, walking slowly along the coast of the Italian Riviera. There are seagulls overhead. Everything is quiet and calm. The pace of life here is slower than what you are used to, and it puts a warm smile on your face. This tale takes place on a blistering, hot day in the middle of July, in the small Italian village called Tellaro. This tiny village sits perched on rocks that overlook the coast. It is one of the most beautiful villages in all of Italy. Every evening in Tellaro, nature displays its grandeur by staging a magnificent sunset. As the shades of crimson sink into the horizon and the moon climbs higher, one feels as if they too are lifted away to a world of magic. But on this particular day in Tellaro, the weather was not very promising. The sky, normally a vast, clear blue and turquoise, suddenly turned grey and dark. The clouds overhead grew heavy and threatened to burst, pouring rain over the little village and all the little villages nearby. The wind, too, blew stronger and stronger, its gusts and gales whipping up the sea waves and letting them crash like thunder on the rocky marina. A group of children was sitting in the village square. They came to play together, but because of the gloomy weather, it seemed like their afternoon would be ruined. They would be utterly bored, the children worried. Today, they wanted to go to the beach and dive off the rocks into the glistening ocean. This is what they liked to do best in summer. Enjoy the long school holiday, swim about in the waves, chase sea creatures, and collect seashells. They also loved having sandcastle contests, seeing who could build the best masterpiece in the sand. But not today. Today they would all have to find some other activity to pass the time. The children huddled together in the square, chatting amongst themselves. But as hard as they tried to think of something, no one came up with things to do for fun. At that exact moment, old Samuel was passing by the little square. He was returning from a hike in the nearby hills. Samuel was an old fellow who liked to wander in nature, collecting herbs and leaves to brew tea, and vegetables to create delicious dishes at home. All the children knew old Samuel. He always had a tale of some adventure to tell. Rumour had it, he was once a sailor who went around the world in a ship, saw many things, and experienced amazing lands, before returning to tiny Tellaro to live out his final years. When he saw the children in the square, old Samuel noticed how bored they all seemed. "Oh, there is nothing to do in this weather," he heard Matteo, one of the oldest, say. Matteo was sitting on a bench next to the square fountain. He reached over and splashed the water with his hand. 2 other 7-year-old boys were lying on the ground next to a low wall. Samuel looked to see what they were doing and noticed that they were tormenting a lizard without a tail. The lizard, still alive and squirming, squiggled in protest, trying to get away. But this seemed to entertain the boys even more, who then started to construct barriers around the lizard with sticks and stones. Old Samuel did not like to see other living creatures suffer. He walked slowly over to the children and tried to get their attention. "Hey, have you ever heard what happened once upon a time in Tellaro when the weather was as bad as it is now? It was a day just like this one, yes, almost exactly this grey and boring." Now, some children looked up at him curiously, but some of the older ones just continued playing, ignoring the old man. "If you want to hear this story," Samuel continued, "a true and old story of pirates, come meet me in the old library in half an hour. But first, tell your parents." Samuel returned to his house and shortly after emerged with a bunch of large keys. The old man lived down in the marina, near the water's edge, at the top of a 3-story yellow building. In the village, houses were built very close together, almost clustered like stacks of blocks. The homes were painted in various pastel colours: pinks, oranges, light blues, and yellow hues. Old Samuel climbed the alley behind the house and soon found himself in the historical library. He opened the portal, entered, and sat quietly, waiting for the children to arrive. But time passed, and nobody came. He was in no hurry though. After all, he didn't have anywhere important to go. And since there was no school today, he figured the kids did not have anywhere more important to be either. Old Samuel decided to wait just a few minutes longer. Soon, the wooden door to the old library creaked open. In walked one child, leading her mother by the hand. Then came another, and yet another, until the library was full of children and their parents. There must have been about 24 children present. The children sat on the ground and waited for Samuel to start talking. A few drops of rain fell, breaking on the red slabs of the churchyard. I remember that on a day like this, my grandfather told me the story I want to tell you now, said old Samuel. All the children and adults took their seats, and when all was quiet, the old storyteller began. You should know that many, many years ago, Tellaro was the stronghold of a place called Barbazzano. Have you ever heard about it? Barbazzano was the ancient village perched on the hills higher up. Today, we only see the ruins in the middle of the woods. Due to a great plague which happened a long time ago, Barbazzano was completely abandoned. Nobody wanted to live there anymore. The city inhabitants moved here, closer to the coast and the ocean, and started to raise their families in Tellaro. But before this occurrence, our village existed to defend Barbazzano from pirate raids. You know, pirate raids were very frequent at the time. Pirates? Cried little Giorgio, excitedly. Yes, sea pirates, Samuel replied, a twinkle in his eye. Many of the pirates were notorious. Do you know what notorious means? That means famous for doing something a little naughty. So we had a lot of notorious pirates here. But the Tellarini, that is, the people from Tellaro, Samuel continued, built a small church on top of the rocks of the marina, dedicating it to Saint George, that legendary knight who slew the dragon. The bell tower of this church rang every day. Most of the time, its gong rang out to announce the hour, or to call people to Sunday Mass, weddings, or funerals. But the church bell tower also had another function. It was a watchtower, so that the residents of Tellaro could always be warned when pirates were approaching. So, a lookout guard was always on watch, day and night. After sunset and until sunrise, the marina was bolted. No one could enter or leave the village by sea. One day in July, the villagers noticed that a great storm was coming. The sky was dark. The wind crept into the alleys, whistling menacingly. A dense mist hid the sky and the dark sea. The ocean rose and fell, gigantic waves crashing on the rocks surrounding Tellaro. Everyone thought it a good idea to shut themselves up in their houses, hoping the next morning clear skies would return. Nobody ventured out to the marina in such bad weather. No one bothered to go shopping, since the little vegetable and fruit markets had also closed due to the storm. No children played on the streets, or bothered to go swimming, of course. That night, the villagers did not even post a sentry to guard the bell tower. You see, they never thought that pirates would ever attempt to sail in these conditions. When darkness fell, everyone fell sound asleep. But outside, the howl of the wind and the heavy rain beat down on the roofs of the houses. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the bells of St. George started to ring. Gong, 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 gong. Some people woke up at the first sound of the bells, and then they were puzzled. Which brave man had stayed awake in this storm to sound the midnight hour? Gong, gong, gong. The bells did not stop. Gong, gong, gong. They kept on ringing until everyone was awake. The fathers and uncles and brothers of Tellaro all got up and lit torches. They rushed together to the marina to see why the bells were ringing. Just then, as the crowds with their lit torches had gathered, 2 pirate ships appeared in the midst of black waves. Everyone could see the terrible ships now, rising and falling as the wind bore them up and then down. The 2 black ships grew larger and larger in size as they approached the coast. Everyone held their torches up to see the ships. They stood firm, even though it was raining and the thunder continued crashing, lightning bolts flashing overhead. Now, the pirate leader saw that the villagers were not taken by surprise. They were not all sleeping in their homes, as he had expected. What a surprise! All the villagers were standing at the marina, torches in hand, ready to fight off this pirate ship. Yes, they were all ready for him. They were all gathered and ready to resist, armed with pitchforks and fired up with torches. Immediately, the pirate captain gave the order to his men. "Retreat," he called out. "Our plan to ambush the village has failed. Retreat." The ships then reversed course and started to sail the other way, away from the village. Everyone cheered at the narrow escape, but still they looked in disbelief at the 2 galleys disappearing again in the waves. The people all hugged each other, happy that they had not been overcome by the pirates in their sleep. But they had stood prepared and were able to chase the ships away. And yet, there remained a mystery. Who had raised the alarm? Gong, gong, gong. They heard the bells again, the alarm that had awakened them all and saved them. Well, who was still ringing the bells? Everyone pointed to the church bell tower, then hurried up the cobblestone streets leading towards it. They then tried to enter the church, but found that the door had been closed. So Who could have been in the bell tower? Who was still ringing the bells? The priest finally arrived with the keys to the church in his hand, and a couple of men scurried up to the top. But to their surprise, guess who they found in the bell tower? Nobody. It was completely empty. There was not a single person up there. Was it a miracle? Was it a ghost? Could all of the villagers, dozens of them, have imagined that the church bells were ringing? How was this possible? And where was the rope to ring the bell? Well now, here was another mystery, for it too was gone. But then one of the villagers called everyone's attention to one of the bell tower windows. The rope was there. It was hanging. The long cord almost looked pushed out of the window. Perhaps it was the wind that had done this. Perhaps the gales of the storm. Everyone who could fit rushed towards the window and pressed themselves to see the hanging rope. But in the darkness, they could not locate its end. The rope seemed to be dangling all the way down to the water, as if it had been dropped down towards the ocean bed. Meanwhile, down below, a boy approached the base of the bell tower with a torch. From down there, he could see what was hanging at the end of the rope. Imagine everyone's amazement and surprise when they discovered what was attached to the end of the rope. A giant octopus. Its 8 arms were clinging to the rope, its suctions grasping the rope ever so tightly. In the darkness, the villagers could see the octopus's silky skin, its long, slithering arms, and its big, bulging eyes. "Oh, a giant octopus," shouted little Giorgio, who had, all this time, been listening intently, absorbed in the story. "But there are no giant octopuses in the Mediterranean," objected Beatrice, who read a lot of books about the sea and knew many facts. "Our octopuses are very small, but very intelligent. They can even unscrew things with their tentacles." "Well, yes," admitted old Samuel. "Nobody knows how big the octopus really was, for they did not really measure him. But, giant or not, the fact remains, somehow, that mysterious sea creature was still able to pull the rope, ring the bells, and sound the alarm." All the children sat still, as if in a trance, listening to the happy ending of this story. That night, old Samuel continued. Thanks to the help of the octopus, the pirates were driven back into the sea. Tellaro and all the village people were saved. All the children wondered if this was true. Some of the parents, after old Samuel had finished speaking, came forward to ask, "Is it true? Did this really happen here, in our village?" they asked. "We wonder because we have heard a similar story told, but in different ways. Which one is the real story? And which one is the legend?" Old Samuel smiled knowingly. The younger generation always wanted to see with their own eyes, feel with their bare hands, and hear only the things that they believed were real. And so, he answered them. This story has been handed down to us over the centuries. He patted some of the young ones' shoulders as he spoke. But as you know, sometimes reality and legend intertwine. How could the octopus have gotten hold of the rope? Would it have been cast into the ocean, just like that? Perhaps a wave had thrown the octopus out of the water. And maybe, just by chance, he had clung to the rope. Some of the people were nodding now. This seemed a more plausible explanation. But, continued old Samuel, what some call chance, others believe to be providence. The smallest of the children clapped their hands. A mother came forward to give her opinion. It was a miracle, she said. Miracle or coincidence, replied old Samuel. To this day, the people of this coastland still debate what saved Tellaro village that day. In any case, it is such a beautiful story. We still like to tell it. That's why there is an octopus on the wall of the church of San Giorgio. One of the boys, little Matteo, spoke up. Yes, exactly, Samuel confirmed. And octopus engravings on the doors and walls in many of the village homes. The children nodded their heads. They were quite familiar with the octopus's motif everywhere. It is for this reason, the old storyteller continued, because of what occurred that night, we are so grateful to the octopus for saving our land. And so, every year in August, we dedicate a 3-day festival to the sea creature. Little Jacopo smiled, but then became puzzled. But if it is a party for him, why do we always eat octopuses during that festival? This time, the old storyteller could only shake his head in reply. This was puzzling indeed. Many of the other adults stifled giggles. Some of the little girls licked their lips, remembering the delicious octopus salads often served at this party. It was seafood, tossed with potatoes and fragrant herbs. By now, some of the grey clouds had already moved away. Somebody pointed to the window and called everyone to look outside. Look, said the child, a rainbow. And, although the children and adults of Tellaro had often seen this beautiful phenomenon in the sky, still everyone crowded the window to get a good look. There was the grand arch, its colours splashing out over the sky, painting a protective bow over them. The grey skies over Tellaro had parted to give way to fluorescent colours. The reds, greens, and purples of the rainbow filled everyone with a sense of calm. It is always beautiful, one of the mothers whispered. For a good 10 minutes, everyone stood silently, thankful for the sign in the sky. And with the memory of old Samuel's story in their mind, thankful also for safety from life's bigger storms. Then, after the rainbow had faded to just a sliver of pastel light, the children started moving about. Old Samuel looked at the clock and realized it was getting late. The sun would soon set, and the families would retreat to their homes to prepare dinner. Old Samuel waved goodbye to the little ones, who went skipping down the small alleyways towards their homes. When everyone had left, he climbed the steps a little higher until he reached a better lookout point, where he could watch the sun sink into the ocean. Although the people of Tellaro had heard his story before, perhaps nobody felt more thankful for that night than old Samuel himself. He was from a family of fishermen, from a long generation of simple people who lived on these shores. Had the pirates attacked Tellaro that night, surely he would not be here today to keep on telling this story. A few seagulls flapped their wings and began circling in the distance. The old man watched as their shapes created moving silhouettes. The sun's last rays backlit the birds, and their soaring above made shadows of movement on the ocean waves. The water was murky now, but the old man knew that deep beneath the surface, mysterious creatures still thrived. He tried to imagine them all: the fish of the sea, the shellfish, the octopuses. They did not sleep like human folk when the sun went down, he knew. Come nightfall, their underwater world was just as alive with movement and magic. In his younger days, he enjoyed diving in the ocean, jumping off those same rocks that surrounded the shore. He loved exploring the nearby caves and swimming, even in the depths of darkness. But now that he was getting old, Samuel struggled even to walk. Still, he kept moving every day. He made it a routine to climb the steps to the bell tower every evening, to watch the sun as it set gloriously on the horizon, and then to walk back slowly down to his home. As he completed his routine tonight, he uttered a silent blessing for all the people, the sea creatures, and living things in Tellaro. Yes, they were blessed to live in one of the most beautiful corners of the earth, and they were all blessed to have the freedom of time to enjoy it. Before he reached his home, old Samuel heard that musical sound again. Gong, 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 gong. The bell tower was ringing. Gong, 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 gong. Old Samuel stopped walking and listened until the bell's ringing faded. Gong, gong, gong. Good night, he answered in reply. Good night to all good things. I will greet you again tomorrow. The old storyteller was very tired now. He entered his home and turned on some heat. He opened his curtains so that he could see the stars as they shone outside, and so that he could see the moonlight as it sparkled over the ocean's face. I hope you have enjoyed the telling of this legend, and I hope one day you get to travel to Tellaro, this tiny, beautiful village. You will find it in the northwest of Italy. It's one of the towns on the Ligurian coast, a place they call the Gulf of Poets. To this day, Tellaro remains a small, quiet town with a charm that is far better felt than voiced. That is why it's been awarded one of the 100 most beautiful towns in Italy. And when you find this magical place, stay a while. Do not leave until you have seen the sunset. For, people say, the sunset in Tellaro is one of the most magical in the world. Good night. Sweet dreams. And I hope that when you drift off to sleep tonight, you will be dreaming of rainbows, sunsets, and sunrises in magical places.